Good evening. Today is Wednesday, November 18th, and this is the Hendrick Hudson School Board of Education meeting. Can I have a motion to call the meeting to order, please?
So moved.
Can I get a second? Lisa Anderson seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay, any opposed? No. Can I get a motion to move into executive session for the purpose of collective negotiations under the Taylor Law?
So moved.
Can I get a second, please?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. So we will be moving into executive session. For the public, we'll be back at about 7 p.m. And we hope to see you then. Good evening. Today is Wednesday, November 18th, and this is the Hendrick Hudson Board of Education meeting. We have just left our executive session, and I would like to start the public session with the Pledge of Allegiance this evening. We have some students who are going to read the pledge for us.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That was wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Can I get a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda?
So
Or the
moved.
agenda as stated, I'm sorry, the agenda as stated.
So moved.
Thank you, Lori.
Second.
Thank you, Corey. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda, or would somebody like an item pulled from the consent agenda this evening? Nobody would like an item pulled, so can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So
So
moved.
moved. I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much. So there were a couple of items already pulled from the consent agenda, and those are the approval of the donations. Hang on just a minute. I have to undo my space bar so that I can get those out and read them. Okay, so we have two donations this evening. The first one is from Richard and Lydia Simonetti, a donation of $370 made possible through New York Life Foundation for the Hendrick Hudson School District. Thank you so much for your generous donation. And the second donation is a donation for the Clara Montague Memorial Football Scholarship in the amount of $550. So thank you again for that very generous donation. Can I get a motion to approve those donations, please?
So moved.
That was,
Second.
I think Lori moved and Lisa seconded? Or, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? All right, thank you very much. So that will bring us to our superintendent's report.
Okay, well, thank you. A number of updates that we placed on the agenda. I'll go through a couple and then we'll turn it over to our to Laura to introduce our special guest. We are dealing with COVID issues, as everyone understands, and some late breaking news is that New York City is closing effective tomorrow as a preventative measure to deal with the coronavirus. The wave is certainly here. It's been here for a little while, and it's starting to impact our schools with a little more regularity. The district office was closed today and will be closed tomorrow because of a positive case in that building. and a number of our schools over the last couple of weeks have closed because of positive cases. We have reports of students who are full-time remote students, so they don't come to school. There have been some positive cases involving those families that we've had to report. So a lot of conversation around the zones and the yellow zone, orange zone, red zone, and the governor's initiative around identifying interventions or responses based on testing rate. I want to let everyone know that every Monday morning we meet with virtually, of course, with the county executive as well as his executive team and Department of Health. And for weeks we have been sharing with him some of our frustrations, but also some of the positive experiences we've had working with the Department of Health. In terms of Hendrick Hudson School District, we've had nothing but positive and effective communications with the department. But we're getting to a point as school districts where we're not really sure what to do if we are designated as a yellow zone. What the county executive has said is that the county is making their resources available to school districts for testing, but not for diagnostic purposes. We would have to send out those samples to be diagnosed and then come back so we could identify students and staff that test positive. One of the hiccups in the governor's plan around the cluster approach is not only testing requirements, but capacity. Westchester County has told us that if the county goes into a zone where at least half of the school districts need to close temporarily to get testing up and going, that the county would not be able to support those efforts in terms of boots on the ground, in terms of supplies and equipment, certainly tests, but the capacity to return those tests in short order. So what typically would happen if we're designated in any one of those zones is we would immediately close and move to our remote learning plan while working with the county to determine if we could meet the requirement of testing 20% of our students and 20% of our faculty over a 2-week window. That is a really daunting task. That's not a task that schools are equipped for, nor do we have staff to do that. So while we applaud the governor's scientific and quantitative approach to how he will make decisions around school closures, that approach really isn't attainable or isn't going to allow us to keep schools open immediately or without having a pause or going remote in the interim. But we'll continue to have those discussions. We're discussing with BOCES, if we can partner with BOCES and some private third-party health consortiums and hospitals and other outfits to meet some of our needs. The issue is, and I don't think it's a secret, that the demand right now is very, very high in our region. Contact tracing is not necessarily happening as frequently as it needs to. We have some families who indicate that they haven't been contacted by a contact tracer after their child or after adults have been remanded to quarantine. So the system is really stressed. It's only going to continue to be stressed as more schools have to close and try to compete with that testing requirement. But I wanted everyone to know we've sent a couple communications directly to families. We've posted information online. And we'll continue to share the late breaking news with families regarding this requirement. But it is not an easy task. It's also not cheap. We estimate that we would spend anywhere between $150,000 and $170,000 in testing to meet the 20% requirement. And we wouldn't even test our full complement of staff and students for 10 weeks because you only do 20% every 2 weeks. So we would not be able to guarantee, for example, that we would have adults or children presently in school that have been tested. Only 1 out of 5 would be tested, and we have 2 weeks to conduct that testing. So these are some lessons learned from the governor from last spring. Certainly he took some heat and he took some took some lumps with how he handled New York State with a wide brush. The issue is the infection rate is pretty standard across the state, and the requirements that schools will need to meet to stay open is very daunting, and it's certainly not cheap. Many organizations, the School Boards Association, Superintendents Association, a lot of organizations are demanding increased funding in order to meet this mandate, because as of now, as important as it is, this is your typical unfunded mandate that if you want to stay open, you have to spend a significant amount of resources on testing and analysis. And in a age where school budgets are getting cut by the state, this would be a new expense. And again, just doing the math, it would cost us a little over $500,000 just to test everyone over a 10-week period. So we wanted to make sure everyone understood what the latest developments were. We will continue to meet with the county executive every Monday and seek his input, but also get any information that's being discussed in Albany. So before I move on, any questions around that initiative? Yeah, Lori?
So what if I asked you this. This is what I meant when I texted you. Like, so what are we doing about this yellow zone stuff? What are we doing? So what if we're designated on Friday? Does that mean we're going to close? Like, what will we do if we get designated tomorrow? It's not going to happen tomorrow, but let's just say. So what if we get designated before we get answers from, are we going to get more funding? Do we close down? And if we close down and go to remote, we don't have to do the testing. Is that correct?
Correct. If we choose to,
This is just to stay open. We have to do the 20% testing just to stay open.
if we want
Go
to
ahead.
be open for any academic programs at all, we would need to do the testing. Correct. We would need to find a way to test 20% of the students who come to our in-school model, and we would have to find a way to randomly test 20% of our staff in order to stay open. Now, we could make the choice, because that choice was given to us in the summer, of you could have an in-school model, you can have an out-of-school model, you could have a halfway or a hybrid model. If we chose to implement the remote learning plan and said to our community, this is our educational modality until further notice, then we would not need to comply with the testing, because we would have no intention of opening our doors. So you're absolutely correct.
What if we decided to just have our elementary schools open and not our middle and our high school? Would we have to test just our elementary, or would it be a broad brush where we would have to test everybody, even if only a few of this, 1 or 2 or 3 of the schools were open?
Yeah, so it's the legal scholars have told us 2 things. One, if you're choosing to have a particular,
I like that phrase.
Yeah, if you're choosing to have a particular group of students come, only those who you're seeking to educate need to be tested 20%. All right. For example, let's say we were only going to educate children with the last name A through L. All right. We would only have to randomly test 20% of those children. Now, the exact same legal scholars are saying, but I'm not sure you can only open your doors for certain kids and not all kids. Right. I don't think you can just open for A through L and not M through Z. Just like I don't think you can open for just boys and not girls, or for certain grade levels and not all grade levels. So that's an open question. What has been answered is, whomever is coming to school, you need to have a mechanism to test 20% of them and their staff. The open question is whether or not we can arbitrarily decide what programs we are opening our doors for that are different than what we opened our doors for in the spring, or in the fall. I'm sorry.
So my question is still the same. What is our plan? So let's say Monday we are placed in the yellow zone. What are we doing? Are we going remote, or what are we doing?
We would go remote and work with the county on a testing plan. For example, what we learned for the first time on Monday is that the county will allow certain qualified or credentialed staff in school districts to administer tests under the county's umbrella. basically they would be deputized county health department employees administering COVID tests to particular students and particular staff. Then the question is, which labs can process those in a swift time, and how much are they going to charge us to do that?
But our plan, just to be clear, if we get placed in the yellow zone before we have or know any of this, we will go full remote and
We will.
not do this testing until we either get help or some other news.
Correct, because there is not one district right now in our county that has secured tests or secured a mechanism to analyze those. So for some period of time, we would need to go remote until the county could secure the tests and until we could identify who's going to analyze them. Correct.
Oh, and money,
And-
who's going to help us pay for this?
Correct.
And if we go fully remote, then will our sports teams be suspended as well during that time period?
That's an open question as well that the Athletic Association has asked the governor and the governor's team, because this is different. Okay, this is different than when the governor shut us down. Our argument would be we're choosing a remote model as opposed to an in-school model, and under that jurisdiction, we could still allow students to participate in athletics because that's the instructional model we chose, as opposed to that model being chosen for us like the governor did last spring. So if we're comparing the two, last spring to any of these colored zone shutdowns, that could be one of the differences, but that's also an open question. That's why, sports, we're identifying who our coaches are, but we haven't officially started winter sports yet because I think even the governor's hesitant as to whether or not he's going to let that proceed.
Does anybody else have any questions? Allie, go ahead.
So I have lots of questions about that, like how we're going to get consent and how people are going to be selected. But I think the first conversation we need to have as a community is that where we want to go? Is that a good use of our financial resources? Everyone, there's a large percentage of our families that want their kids in school, but when we're looking at the big picture, is this financially sound to move forward? You know what I'm saying? Because then all these other technical questions don't really matter if it's not the way that the community wants to spend their money.
I can respond a little bit about that. First of all, let me tell you that this afternoon we had a board meeting for the health consortium, and there are 16 school districts in the Putnam, Northern Westchester that are part of the consortium. And we asked the manager to see if we can do this as part of the health insurance. First of all, he thinks that it's going to take some time. So, and sometimes it's not a week or 10 or 2 weeks because he has to go to CVS and see if CVS can do it with us. And without any doubt, this is going to be an extremely expensive situation. As it is, I can tell you, last year, we spent a lot more money in certain cases because we were saving money in other ones. And that's why we had a very big fund balance. But this year, we're spending even more money in Chromebooks, in teachers, in teaching assistants, but we're not saving in anything else. We're not saving in drivers because we have the same number of routes. We're not saving in heating oil because we have half the students there. So this will put a big burden on the school district. Like Joe said, this is an additional $500,000 that we need to find in our budget. And $500,000 means 5 teachers. If at the end of the day we don't find or we decide to go this route and it comes April and we don't have enough money, it means that we need to furlough 20 teachers because it's 3 months, the last 3 months of the year. So definitely a financial decision, but also a program decision, because I can tell you that this year we're very, very tight in money because of all the extra expenses that we had to that we're spending in COVID. Also, we're spending more money in cybersecurity because of what happened in the districts around us. So all in all, I can say that $500,000 is not going to be easy to find.
And to answer your other question, Alex, we do believe parents would need to consent if they choose not to have someone affiliated with the district conduct the test. They can go to their healthcare provider, but that would be at a family expense and not the district expense.
And how would you pick the 20% that you're targeting?
They're random. I mean, the guidance is random, and we could
Okay.
use a random identification. Every student and staff has a ID, and we could have a mechanism to pick those for us. But yeah, I mean, what this does, as important as it is, that's the conundrum. As important as it is, this now takes our focus away from our core competencies. Of trying to educate children as best we can, and this is a wrinkle in the mix. And there is a pretty good healthy debate. There's a good debate over whether schools are safe enough, or we should open more seats and keep our masks on, but only enforce a 3-foot social distancing. There are a lot of different theories out there. The issue is the virus is here. We are closing schools and programs now, weekly, and we don't know, when we're going to get the next call. I mean, last week alone, 5:30 in the morning, a Sunday afternoon, last night. So it's, and other districts have closed, just so you know, other districts have closed related to COVID, but not to a positive case. They've closed because they've got too many kids, or especially too many staff that are quarantining, that they can't open their schools safely to supervise students. And so they made the determination to close for chunks at a time, because even being remote gives a level of consistency to parents that sometimes is more appreciated than the crapshoot of whether school's going to be open more than 2 days a week. And again, these are circumstances we're learning in real time. But in terms of capacity, we heard loud and clear from staff with the county health department that, if at least half of our school districts are put in the yellow zone and choose to try to comply with the testing requirement, the capacity just is not there, and the system at that point would crumble on itself, and we would need to be remote. And there was no way, Lori, I guess, to get a little more clear. We're probably not going to be given a whole lot of heads up. So when we are given the heads up, we will need to go remote and then secure all of those other things, because it also wouldn't be financially appropriate for the health department to reserve thousands of tests for Hen HUD sitting in our refrigerator or wherever they need to be stored, or having a guaranteed contract with a healthcare provider to analyze tests if we never even get there. We may go directly to an orange or a red zone at this rate. We may skip one. The other goofy thing, and again, this is just reading the fine print of the microcluster language. The other goofy thing is that by testing more, there's likely to be more positives, which will accelerate the positivity rate that will bring us to an orange or a red zone quicker. So then you run the risk, as Enrique said, spending time and energy securing tests and paying for an analysis when you may end up closed anyway. So that's part of the conundrum that 80 school districts in the lower Hudson Valley are trying to contend with.
and not for anything, just for another, I don't know why I even thought of this, but who's going to go test a 6-year-old? That's horrible, right? Or any of our, all right. Have we given any thought of going remote for after Thanksgiving or anything like that? Or
So as a region, we had that discussion with a number of agencies. There are a couple schools of thought. To go remote as a preventative measure, what we're hearing from the medical community is, especially now, by the time people identify symptoms, get tested and get their results, that's usually a 1-week window if you're symptomatic. And so what they're suggesting is if you want to do anything preventative, you actually would open school for a week and then you would close the 2 weeks after that, because you kind of need a week to see if you have folks demonstrating symptoms, therefore getting tested and getting their results back. Because if we decided to close for 2 weeks, that first week really isn't beneficial because they could be acquiring symptoms and they definitely would not have been tested by then.
but they could be spreading it then.
They could. They could, especially if they're asymptomatic. But then you wouldn't close just for 2 weeks. You basically would be closed from Thanksgiving all the way to the New Year. So the districts that are closing are not necessarily out of prevention. It's out of staffing and ability to operate their schools safely. And to have enough supervision, whether it's bus drivers or in classroom. And again, it goes back to, schools, especially Clarkstown, North Rockland, even districts closer to us who have closed for weeks at a time, buildings that have closed for weeks at a time. It was a little bit because of staffing concerns or so many kids were out, but also that gave parents at least a guarantee for a period of time, rather than wondering when they're going to get the email or phone call that their school is closed for 2 days or 5 days. So the conversation moved from a preventative nature to out of circumstance that's unique to those communities.
So this is a good time to say, that just remember this virus is very serious. We have holidays coming up. Try to remain vigilant, maintain those procedures that we know work, wear masks, stay socially distanced. We want to keep our schools open, and the more our community helps us out with that, the better off we'll be.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have any questions?
All
Okay.
right. I'm accused of batting out of order, so I'm going to throw this over to Laura to introduce our special guest. I see her square is on our Zoom. So over the next couple board meetings, we're going to highlight different programs and different initiatives taking place in our classrooms. 2 weeks ago, we had our technology coaches talk about their work over the last number of months. Today, we have one of our high school teacher extraordinaires, Melissa Bartholomew, with us, and she's going to talk about a number of different technology-related initiatives in her classroom that's much different the last 3 months than in her teaching career. But she has she's been just absolutely outstanding and has used this opportunity to learn many new skills and trades and have applied them beautifully. So I'll turn it over to Laura to transition us to Melissa.
I think you said everything I would say, Joe. So I'm just going to pass it over to Melissa, teacher extraordinaire. So Melissa, we look forward to you sharing, how you've managed to transition your classroom this year to the hybrid learning.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen, but hello, everybody. And just in terms of introduction, again, I'm Melissa Bartholomew, and I teach at the high school, and I currently teach English 10, English 10 honors, and 12th grade advanced placement literature and composition. But I have been in the district since 1995 and have taught every level in the English discipline from grade 7 to 12. So yeah, this is a brand new world for, I think, everybody, but what I believe in is being innovative, and it's really important in this time to be able to pivot. So, and I just really had to use that business word so badly. So I was like, all right, it's time to use the pivot word. So yes, we had to make a pivot. So I have permission to share my screen. So I'm going to do that. And it's this one. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen, and I created a presentation. So hopefully it will show. Is it showing? Okay. So, because I haven't used Zoom before, but I have used Google Meet. So I always get to get a little bit of a sense of what's going on. So one thing I wanted everyone to know is that I'm really, truly committed to providing the best learning experience possible for all my students, whether they are in person, virtual, or in this case, both hybrid learning, where I have them in front of me and I have them on the computer screen at the same time. So that's me. I decided to take a screenshot of myself before I was getting ready to teach. And so I just put some arrows there so you can see what's going on. And so I have multiple screens up, and my sons joked with me and asked me how many keyboards I need. And I was like, I need them all. But I have the smartboard for the students who are in the classroom. I have my own screen, which is where the laptop that's provided by the district. In this case, I had my own before I got the laptop, but in recent pictures, I have the new laptops, which have been great. So thank you, Laura Nyer, for that. And I have an extra monitor so that way I can see what's being presented to the students at home virtually. Plus I have my earphones that are connected to the laptop. So that way, if I create separate breakout rooms for students who are virtual or students in the classroom, I can conference with them and only hear them and what they're saying, which is really cool. And I also have a conference speaker. So I thank my husband and the Amphenol Corporation for that one. For the opportunity to give the students in the classroom a full classroom inclusive experience, because in the first 2 weeks of school, I decided, why not? I'm going to have a Socratic seminar, right, with AP Literature. And people were like, how are you going to do that? And I was like, well, I'm going to turn the conference speaker on, and the students in the room are going to hear everybody at home, and everybody at home is going to hear everybody in the room. And we had a great conversation about Grendel and Frankenstein and Prayer for Owen Meany. And it was just an amazing conversation, and everybody felt included. So that's the biggest thing, I think, in terms of being innovative when it comes to hybrid learning, is the inclusivity, really making sure that everybody feels that they're participating and that they're being heard. I mean, we really know that students want to know that they are present and that we take what they're doing, and their contributions to heart. And so I really wanted to make sure that that was happening. So this is like one of my setups. And then I have the same kind of setup when I teach remotely at home, except for the smartboard, obviously, right? But I have smartboard technologies. So yeah, that's kind of exciting right there. And so to show you it in action, I thought to myself, I could speak about it, but I could also just show you pictures. So here are my students in the English 10 honors class, and they are working on a group project. As you can see to the left, we have a student working with her group, and her group is virtual, and they were doing their project together. And then to the right, you have a group, they're smiling, giving the thumbs up, and they also have their friends on their screens, and they have their earbuds so they can talk and listen to one another. And of course, we're practicing our 6 feet of social distancing, and we have our masks on, and I'm speaking to them from across the room. And I also have all the students that are on my screen as well in breakout rooms, which is really fun to do in Google Meet. If you have them all join, you have to do this first. You have to have them all join first, and then you can put them in any groupings that you want as a teacher. So you don't have to be stuck to the randomization of the breakout groups in Google Feature, just as a fun FYI. So really great. And I shared that with all my teacher friends as well. So I was very excited about this, because this is one of the projects that I would do with my students, and we would go to the library and we would go into groups and we would work and we would do the projects, and then they would present the project. And I thought to myself, how can I make this possible in a hybrid learning situation? And really what it came down to was just being really creative and also being really positive with the students and saying, this can happen. And they're like, okay. And so I think they just like go with your positive energy that it can be done. And when we presented the projects, it was so well done. I am so proud of them. And I still have 2 more presentations to go on Friday of this week. And I'm so proud of them, and they're doing just such a great job. And so they're really adorable too, because if there's ever an internet issue or whatever, they'll FaceTime with another person. So we had multiple technologies going on at once, where we had the Google Meet, then them on the Google Meet with their friend on FaceTime through the Google Meet to me. So it was awesome, and it just worked. So you always can count on your student population to come up with cool ways to keep everything moving. So that's what you have to do too, is be really trusting and work as a cohesive community of learners, and be learner yourself with them, which I think they really enjoy, because I love learning about all of these technologies. And it's just made the teaching experience so much fun for me. I mean, I'm just 100% dedicated to it. So the next slide is the blue cohort working. And again, you can see them having a conversation and really still having that sense of community, and having peer discourse, and still keeping the development of relationships going. And that's what's so important, is that I really remember to keep at the forefront social emotional learning. And I have a slide at the end that I'll show you that deals with the social emotional component. But I always ask my students and how they're doing. I get to take a finger of the pulse of what they think about the workload. And I always ask them about pacing, which is something I'm going to talk about in just a second. So this is my English 10 students, and I'm so proud of them. Again, you can see the conference speaker in the forefront of the picture. There's my teacher planning page, so I can keep track of all the groups, because you have to be uber organized. That's the biggest thing with this, is that you really have to be a planner and think about what you're doing to create engaging. That's really important to me. Engaging lessons, because we want the students to be involved, whether they're at home or they're in the classroom, right? So I want to make sure that I'm creating lessons that have multiple layers and tiers that keep everybody involved. And as you can see, they're working with each other, as well as working with students on their screens. And I have the conference speaker, again, using that to help me. And then I have separate breakout rooms for students who want to conference individually. And that is a really big thing. So it's a feature that I've decided to try, where you create a separate Google Meet code by adding your last initials to the Google Meet code. So they're all like MAB. So it's almost like I'm Queen Mab from Romeo and Juliet. It's kind of fun. So I added my last initials to the Google Meet code, so I can create another room that you can open up and then do individual conferences with each student. So you have them in breakout rooms, and at the same time can work with individual students, and that individual student doesn't have to fear that other people are hearing their concerns, because I have the earphones on, and so I can only hear them, and I work with them individually. So they get one-to-one support as well as group support. So cool. All right, next slide. So I had to share this because this was just so cute, but my AP Lit students created line of reasoning hand turkeys. And I said, okay, everybody share. And this is what they did. Isn't that adorable? I just love that. So, and then the other screen is I'm playing jazz music for Writer's Workshop, because you can still do Writer's Workshop. Who says that I have to lecture and talk for the entire time? By the way, I was totally ready and totally excited about block scheduling. Just as an FYI, I probably shouldn't say that, but I was so excited, and I was ready for that, because it's so great for what you can do with hybrid learning, but it's also just great in general. And I was like, wow, you could get a nice meaty Madeline Hunter lesson design right in that space. So I was pretty excited. So this is Writer's Workshop in play, and you can see my screen. I have all they're in icons, because I'm giving them the time to work. And what I'm doing is I'm looking at their Google Documents while they're away from the screen, because I tell them to take a break from looking at their screens, or just take a moment, and so they can turn their cameras off, so that way they can work and focus. And then I talk to them via the chat and Google Documents. And that's all because of Schoology, which I will talk about in a second, actually. So Schoology, this is what makes hybrid learning so effective for me. I have to tell you, I love it. And the reason, and I'm not just saying that, because I know some people are like, really? But I know I actually love it. And the reason I do is because it's a learning management system and it is extremely powerful. And I am very, very proud of the work that I put into this because it makes the hybrid learning that much easier for all the students. Why? Lesson transparency. Transparency. It's so wonderful. I can put the objectives in there. I can do the connection to life. I can make sure that I put the skill focus in there. I can put all their daily notes. So as you can see, like I have all the English 10 notes that everybody gets copy of class notes. Everybody does. It's amazing, right? So you set up all the pages and then you can have different links. Plus you can differentiate the instruction. You can assign certain pages to different students at different times. Plus you can flip the classroom so that way students are in the classroom can be working on, let's say, the writing component that you have them working on, but I could have students at home watching a video that I've made, and then they're getting the instruction. Then we flip the classroom again, and then I work with the remote students, and then the in-class students follow up with something different. How cool is that? So you can really be innovative. You have to really think outside the box to take advantage of all the wonderful things that hybrid learning can offer. And I'm not saying I wouldn't do all of these things being just in the classroom alone, because I will sing, I will dance, I'll do all of those things, but I want everybody to get the full experience. And Schoology allows for that, like I said, that transparency. I can personalize the learning. I can flip the classroom. I can create station rotations. I can utilize the breakout rooms and assess their learnings. I can have, I can support their social emotional learning. And I can provide students with choice, and I can empower them with choosing the different lessons that they want to go through at their own pacing. So that's neat too. So like in the classroom, I might have 3 students who are on Graphic Organizer 1, 3 students on the virtual on Graphic Organizer 2, 4 students who are working on a rough draft, maybe 3 students are conferencing with me, and I'm just orchestrating the design. And all the students feel like, I believe, at least the response I'm getting is that they feel that they're involved in what's going on and that they have choice in that. Because I'm a really big fan in student choice and voice as well. But I have everything. And if you could see the pages, I know the print is small, but like I put so much effort into each unit and lesson. And I really believe in letting them go through it either synchronously or asynchronously. So there's a lot of choice there. But I'm a really big fan of Schoology for all of those reasons. And the key to hybrid design, which I'm telling my colleagues, is creating engaging content in Schoology. Because it's not meant to be just a PDF distribution center. You're supposed to put your full lesson in there. And I just think that's like such a fun way of doing it. I mean, the discussion boards alone have been amazing. And not only that, but I mean, the best part of this whole thing is for students to have fun and be creative. So again, like that's my main page. I made like a little Google Classroom so that students can feel like they're welcomed and involved. I have a place for announcements. I have a place for them to put where their pets are, so they can share things like that. I ask the students every day how they're doing, or I'll ask them different questions like, would they rather have a pet dinosaur, or, you know, would they rather be a wizard or a pilot? Like, and we just kind of have these like little icebreaker questions that start the day to get us moving, etc. And then some of the tools that I've been using that work really well, and I'll show you some examples that help bring the in-class students with the virtual students together, besides the conferencing speaker, is Jamboard, which is amazing. I've been using Padlet a lot. Pear Deck especially is especially powerful because it's a Google Slide extension. And what you can do with it is that you have the students respond to your questions live. So you don't have to rely on the chat box feature only. But I have to tell you that it's very exciting that the student participation rate, especially during wait time 2, has, I think, increased because of the use of discussion boards and because of the use of Pear Deck and because of the use of Jamboard. I feel that those students who can be a bit introverted feel that they can have a voice because they can type their responses and still be heard. And it's been really powerful, and you don't get the same hands raised in class that you would normally see. You get really everybody. So like if I have a class of 24, there's 24 sticky notes on the Jamboard, or there's 24 responses, or I can assess student learning live time and then go, okay, we can move to the next skill. So it's been really exciting. I've been using Loom. Loom is a video feature. It's similar to Screencastify, but I'm a big YouTube channel person myself, so I do those myself. If anybody, I don't know, I was really proud of my parent video. I was like really excited about it for Meet the Teachers Night, and that was like so much fun to do. So I put that on the Schoology page. And Flipgrid is another place for students to videotape themselves, and then they can share their responses that way, which is great. And then I have the breakout feature and the poll feature. So this is an example of a Padlet. You can see the responses. I mean, I couldn't be more proud, and I could assess them and work through the, what they've learned through the story. So this is 10 honors. This is a Jamboard from 12th grade advanced placement literature, where they got into groups and they had to move the Post-it notes around and put the story in chronological order and then come up with theme topics as a group. And these groups, by the way, are mixed in class and virtual. It's not like, oh, it's only virtual students. These are truly hybrid groups working together to come to agreements and then sharing their findings in class. And then this is a cool Jamboard that's called Stop and Jot, which is a technique that I use. And I wanted them to make predictions, ask questions, connections, or comments. And you can see their little icons in the top corner. And I thought that was really great. Just checking reading comprehension for my English 10 class. This is my bell ringer. So whenever they come into class or they're on virtual, I always have a slide like this, and that's where my question is that I ask them for the day. So I always have something cute to, just check social emotional learning, see how they're doing, finger on the pulse of like how they're feeling for the day and how much I should incorporate into the lesson for the day. All right, so this is a fun slide. This is what I give AP Literature. I tell them all the skill sets in advance, and they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, this is what's going on in this story. And they're like, okay. But I love the transparency of it. And then this is fun. This is what I do for my English 10 honors and my English 10 as well. I always do some sort of GIF. I always let them know what the homework or independent practice is. I'm always transparent about the skill sets, even though they're in Schoology, I repeat it here. And then I always tell them what I'm modeling and what we're continuing. So that way this is up on the smartboard, and it's also up as a presentation for the students in the virtual realm. So I'm really excited by all of those things. And I feel like the learning management system really does allow me to, I have to tell you, like, craft my lesson design and even become a more effective educator. I mean, I'm always learning, but I really feel that this situation has provided opportunities to hone the craft of teaching, which has always been a vocational calling for me. And so I feel like I'm even more effective, if that makes sense. And not that I'm saying I wasn't effective, but I feel as if that I've been given an opportunity to like raise the bar on making sure that all students are heard, and that the differentiation of instruction, whether I'm providing enrichment or support, is provided for all students. That to me is what's most important, is that all students of all abilities and levels are being reached in the classroom. And I can use the hybrid model to speed things up, slow things down, and work individually and make sure that the students are really getting the skills that they need. So I'll just go back to something cool and then I'll stop sharing, which I don't know how to do because I don't see the stop sharing button anymore. So maybe I could get a little help from that. So I just wanted to end with the following, that a big benefit has been the lesson design, the interacting remotely, the learning management system, the one-to-one, thank you so much, the one-to-one learning opportunities, the well-being check-ins, the opportunities to view video supplements and work independently, and really provide a curriculum while still maintaining, and this is what's really important to me, maintaining a student-centered, student-driven curricula. Hands down, so important to me. And so I am really proud of the work that I've done, and I'm finally coming to a conclusion because my tone is shifting. But I just love teaching so much, and I just enjoy the opportunity to learn. And I appreciate you all listening to everything I had to say tonight. And I have to tell you that I'm most proud of the growth that my students have had this year from September to now. But I'm also really proud of the work that I did last year from March to June. I really felt like I pivoted and made the changes that need to be made for my students. And I will continue to learn and grow as a professional educator for the betterment of my students. So that's my presentation on hybrid education.
Thank you, Ms. Bart. I want to be in your class. I'm excited about it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Sounds like you're learning a lot of lessons that we'll be able to continue through past our remote learning model and improve instruction going forward as well. So that's fantastic. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
I love the energy. I think it's great. I mean, you know, having this hybrid model has been a challenge, but to see something really good come out of everything that's happening, that where we can start to think ahead about what learning looks like in the future, and really start to implement that now. I know it's kind of, you know, it's been forced upon us a lot faster than anybody ever expected, but just seeing these fantastic results just really gives me a lot of hope, and you've given me a lot of energy. So thank you.
You're welcome. My pleasure. I think that what's so important for our student body is that I have to really be the embodiment of the change, and that it can be for the betterment of their learning experience, and that I'm there for them 100%. And that it's not my, you know, duty to say, oh, this can't be done. No, I'm going to figure a way out, and I'm going to make it happen for them because that's what they deserve.
That's fantastic, because we hear so much negative right now. There's so much negative. What can't we do? What can't we do? What can't we do? And to hear somebody saying, what can we do, is really refreshing, and it's really exciting.
I just think it's a professional duty to learn and reach out and try to find those resources and do what's best for the students. And so I think I joked with Laura Nyer when she put the Schoology, I think she only announced Schoology for like a brief minute. And I immediately watched like 3 videos and was ready to set up. Like, I was like, why isn't Schoology up yet? I need to start writing all my lessons and put it in. So I think it's really important to be innovative and a go-getter and be someone who is at the forefront of this. So I want to try to be a role model for people to say, look, it can be done, and we can. Yes, I love professional development, and I don't want to say anything about that, but I can PD myself too. You know, I mean, I'm capable of learning how to do a Jamboard, you know, and I was like, and I want to make sure that I can provide the opportunities. But I've taken a lot of the tech coaches courses because they have a lot of valuable information. And I always check Laura Nyer's emails whenever there's an opportunity to go and learn something new. And I think that that's the biggest thing, is saying, what can I do to be better? And I'm getting those emails and I'm getting those opportunities. So I'm going to make sure I take them. I love Laura's emails. They always have something interesting.
I have to say, it's interesting because I had an opportunity to work very closely with Melissa when I was the assistant principal at the high school, and I oversaw the English department and a prior English teacher myself. And so the energy that Melissa brings is something she's always brought to her classroom, and her perspective on instruction and student-centered learning has always been, I think, at the forefront and a model for really what we believe for in an education. And I know Margaret agrees with me, as she's had the chance to observe Melissa as well. And I've had many times been able to join her Socratic seminars. And I think, Melissa, what you're doing, is, again, that concept of taking a positive attitude, and you are modeling for these students skills that are beyond the English curriculum. You're modeling for them just being resilient and, moving forward no matter what their circumstances are. And I think that concept of preparation is really what we want our kids to be. We want them to be whole people. So when they leave us, they continue to be citizens of the world, whether it's digital citizens or kind to each other, or just learning how to think on their feet. And you're modeling for that for them. So I just think that is so impressive. And like you said, we have tools, right? So we talk all the time, and we can provide technology tools, but it's what you do with them that matters. And it comes back to the heart of being an educator and understanding student learning. And I think so, Melissa, I think in this presentation really embodied a lot of those concepts in there. I'm sure Margaret could probably attest to that as well, and has some comments that she might want to share.
Yes, before we lose her, I know Joe always passes the baton off to each of us and we speak. And I would just say, if it was my turn right now, what she said, because Melissa's been a fabulous teacher before COVID and technology and all sorts of things. I think one of the things I love the best about watching her is the relationships. She cares about her kids, and they know that, and they respond. But we're talking about possibilities, what's possible in this environment, instead of, oh my God, I can't do it this way. And how will I do it a different way? And what if it fails? And so she's really showing you that we can look at the situation we're in and make the very best of it, actually even sometimes make something better than what we had before. And I know we've talked about it at different board meetings, but I feel strongly, and I know my colleagues feel strongly about this, and Melissa clearly does as well. There are things happening in this environment that we have to keep with us when we get on the other side of this, and we all have a vaccination, and we're back together full time. We really have to think about what should be different. We don't want to go back to business as usual. I think if you saw her classroom, the amount of effort and interest she's put into really blending the children that are at home with the kids that are present, you can do that and make everybody feel like they're still part of a classroom community. So, I mean, I could talk for hours about all of the highlights she hit in that presentation, voice and choice, and it just went on and on and on. And that's really, I could save this and say to people, this is what we want secondary education to look like. This is what secondary education should look like. And honestly, it can look like this in math and in science and in social studies and in foreign language, you name it. But not everybody is yet where Melissa already is. And so how do we help our colleagues get to that place? So I thank you very much for the presentation tonight, Melissa. I knew you were going to blow my mind, and you totally did. And I wish I could get there and watch you do it, but I'm trying not to make people feel uncomfortable by showing up places. So please keep up the good work and enjoy every moment that you have with those kids, because I know they're enjoying their moments with you.
Thank you very much. And thank you all for listening. It's been a real pleasure. And I would love to share anytime in the future. Anytime, and anyone is invited anytime into my classroom. If you ever want to email me, I'll send you a Google Meet link. See you on the flip side, as I tell my students.
Thank you very, very much.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
With that, it's a mic drop, and she is out of here. So that was very exciting. What I appreciated most about Melissa's commentary was the piece around transparency, that coming into her classroom or any classroom shouldn't be a guessing game in terms of what kids are going to learn or what their expectations should be or how we're going to bridge curriculum and learning and expectations together. So that was really refreshing, because sometimes we're not as transparent as we think we are, and kids have enough anxieties these days. They don't need to walk into a classroom not knowing what their next steps are. So at a future board meeting, we're going to have some friends from our elementary model, our remote model, come and present how they are orchestrating an entire classroom and an entire classroom culture through virtual instruction. So we're excited about that. We're going to try to line them up for our next board meeting, which is December 2nd. But in that vein, the last comment I had before I turn it over to our team is in the coming days, we hope as soon as Friday, but certainly before Thanksgiving, we will send out a survey to all. We're going to start with elementary. We're going to send out a survey to our elementary parents so they can identify what their interests are for second semester. As you know, when the governor gave us permission to build basically an online school program for families that wish to stay home during the pandemic, we asked parents to commit for a full semester. We are thankful that they committed, and we hope that they've enjoyed their experience. What that allowed us to do for a full semester was to give them time to get used to a new system and a new model. But what it did perhaps most importantly is it reduced transitions of kids coming and going between programs, and it allowed us to know who our audience was, whether in school or remote. So we could give those kids our full time and attention. The end of the semester is around January 25th, 27th. So while that is more than 2 months away, we want to get ahead of this as quickly as we can. So if you are an elementary parent, regardless of what your child's program is right now, we're going to send you a survey. We'll give you some time to contemplate, but we're going to start collecting information on what parents would like to do or what educational experience they'd like their children to have for the second semester, so we can build that model. One caveat, and I need to make sure I underscore this, our model is contingent on the breakdown of students and by grade. So if we have a lot of students that want to come back to in school, we are going to have to evaluate whether or not we can have all of those children in school every day. We are one of very, very few school districts. I don't know of any, but I know there are some out there. One of very few school districts that if you want to come to our elementary program, K through 5, you can come every single day. The reason is because we had families that chose a remote model. The reason is we had extra classroom space. The reason is we were able to retrofit some staff and have them pick up classroom sections. But if more children come back into the in-school model than we have resources for, we will need to reevaluate what our model is. We may have to do a A/B rotation every other day, half day. We don't know. It depends on the numbers, but that's why we're trying to get out in front of this more than 2 months in advance. But the numbers and the interest will dictate our capacity for in-school model and as well as our capacity for a remote model. Parent-teacher conferences at the elementary level happened last week. We checked in with a number of them, and parents seem satisfied. We do know of some families that are interested in returning just because of some family situations, and we anticipated that. We're also aware of some families who are currently in school that we believe are going to want to choose a remote model, especially as the infection rate creeps up. So look for that survey, hopefully by the end of the week, but certainly before we break for Thanksgiving, and we'll continue to let everyone know where those numbers break down and what we'll be able to accommodate starting in early February. And with that, I'll turn it over to our team. On my top left corner, I see Lisa. So Lisa, some quick updates regarding PPS.
I'm hoping, can you hear me? Oh, wow, it works tonight. Margaret and I were struggling last night when we were trying to meet. I couldn't get my volume to work. Just some quick updates. Margaret talked a little bit last week about the high school sailor kids, how they were able to help her put together some bags for the students at home, being prepared if we do shut down. But one of the things we didn't talk about is how the older kids, the 19 to 21-year-old students, had the opportunity to ETP, which is called Employment Training Program, which is through the Office of People with Developmental Disabilities, OPWDD. And unfortunately, because of COVID, they would work through OPWDD, they'd be hired through the state, and they'd be actually trained in the school time to do some jobs. And they'd be coached by employees of the state. And that's part of a program that they would come into the school for the last 2 years of school. Unfortunately, due to COVID, they weren't able to hire students, they weren't able to work, and we had 3 qualified students. So Jess Van Valkenburg and Lauren Bells at the high school worked very diligently this summer and created a work lab for those students. And I just wanted to highlight some of their work because they were able to simulate a lab, even though we can't go into the community because we are obviously are not able to go out, but they have done some real life skills programs for the kids within the school and have aligned some of the experiences that they might have gotten in the community, such as clocking in, how to sanitize, how to sanitize their workstation, or if they are working within a room, how to be 6 feet apart. Students clock in and out for daily work. They follow a schedule. They complete daily tasks and assignments. So they are getting the work experience as the older students we hope to get within the community through this program. But they worked very hard to ensure that they got those vocational skills because we do want to prepare them for a post-21 experience and not just to go into a program, but even possibly work. So they have utilized the high school and really worked on their employability skills. So I just wanted to, highlight that because we really thought this ETP program would be something that would really give these students a leg up as they were transitioning out of program. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. We're continuing in Sailor One, working on the mock interviews and how to fill out a job application, things to that nature, but they've taken it to another level. So I just wanted to share that. And I think that's our biggest highlight. I mean, I think we're still kind of stuck in our offices, not really pushing into the buildings. We didn't want, as Margaret said, making people feel uncomfortable. We're really trying to do that smart and not spread anything. So I just think that's really important and that our kids are still learning those important skills as we continue to be in this weird zone of COVID.
Thank you. Margaret?
Well, I said a lot already. I think the thing that is uppermost on my mind right now as I work with the principals and our outside consultants is striking that balance with PD about keeping our initiatives going and not losing the momentum that we worked so hard to kind of get together and push forward. And I feel that some folks are feeling a little bit let down that we've lost so much of that this year, especially with the social distancing piece in many of our classrooms. We had so many conversations about student-centered even furniture and how do we change the physical environment of a classroom to encourage engagement. So we've lost a little bit of that, and I'm sensing that in some of my conversations, and we're trying to kind of keep that afloat, but also we are aware that we cannot push staff to the breaking point. So this is such a challenging situation to think your way through. As I said, not everybody is where Melissa is, and there are good reasons for that. So really, the trickiest thing right now is figuring out where folks are and what the next right thing is to keep them going, to have them not only feel good about the work that they're doing, but feel as though they're making progress and they're keeping their kids afloat in this curriculum. So I know a lot of people have the past couple of weeks, as they saw the numbers starting to increase, were really stressed about where is this going? Is this going to be like the spring? And people are worried about that. They are, the elementary people, as Joe said, are so thrilled that we have our kids back every day, all day. I think that's a great accomplishment for the district. And they're crossing their fingers that we don't lose those opportunities. And yet we also know that it is what it is, and we'll make the best of it and get through to this, to the other side of this in a better place. So that's the hard part, as I said, that delicate balance of, keeping it going and yet not getting to that stress point where people just can't get it done because there's a lot to get done. So I respect what they need. And I think we've worked together to make sure that we're not tipping and yet continue to explore some of the opportunities that you see Melissa so enthusiastic about. So, and I want to give a shout out to Laura's tech coaches who have done such a fabulous job with their colleagues, being available, supporting their work, answering their questions. It is, teacher to teacher is one of the best ways for an organization to move forward, but you have to have the right teachers in those positions. And I think we do have a really great set of colleagues in those positions to help us through this time. So it's a collaborative effort, right? It takes a village, and we've got a pretty good village, I think. So.
Yeah, thank you. Enrique, some updates. We have some good news we're going to publish to the community about our credit rating that you'll hear live right now, and some other financial related matters.
Yes, we finished our credit rating, and believe it or not, the district is only 2 notches below the US government. So we are A+, and we're stable even with the Indian Point closure. So I think it was a very, very good report. And it's a report from a company very well known, and it's unbiased. So that's what they think about us, and that's what they are recommending to investors. So we had a very good report. We issue $18.5 million bond anticipation notes at an interest rate of 0.5%, the lowest we have ever done in the history of the district. And then we refinanced $1.7 million for 3 years, and we're going to save about $60,000 in the refinancing. So as bad as COVID has been, interest rates are at the lowest, as we all know, and we're taking advantage of it. So we've done very well there. Yesterday we had our internal audit committee. I had to leave in the middle, so probably one of the members can comment, and I had to leave because there was a COVID incident in central office. The good news is that it didn't spare the people that were next to the person that tested positive. All we went today, and we all tested negative. So that's good news. And that's it. I think next week we're having another audit committee with our external auditors, and then we'll be able to talk about it in the next board meeting.
Thank you. Laura, some quick updates from your world?
Sure. To piggyback off Margaret talking about the tech coaches, they continue to work every week, office hours, running, supporting each other. And I have to say, one of the great things that's making the tech coaches work so well is also the building administration support. They're really utilizing the people that are in their buildings and taking the initiative to plan with them. I already know, for example, that we have an early release day coming up soon, and the middle school and high school are already creating plans with their tech coaches. And so I just think that the concept of the tech coaches has really grown through this experience, and that buildings and colleagues know that they have resources that they can rely on. So they've kind of, grown, and I'm really proud of that. And I'm happy that the buildings are able to work with them so well and, take those initiatives. Right, I've been focusing on some infrastructure. So yesterday, since the high school was remote, I actually made my first visit in a while to the high school building. and was able to see some of the work done with construction, just keeping an eye on, our server. We are reviewing and assessing our Wi-Fi, our access points, locations of that, trying to really make sure there's solid connectivity. So we're just in that process of evaluating some of that infrastructure. We're also this week have begun rolling out, making sure that every single student who has a district device is getting a touch screen. We had an order of about 300 that were back ordered for a while. So some students were given non-touch, and my goal was to make sure that every student had a touch device. So my tech team has been working with the buildings, and where they're going classroom by classroom this week with elementary, just, creating swaps and also just tagging every device that was handed out in the spring. And then Friday and Monday, they're trying to get to all the middle school and high school students as well. So the goal would be by the end of next week that every single student who needs one has a touch device. So that's a big win, I think. And then on the HR side of things, it's busy just working with employees and trying to help them through this chaotic time. We have people whose children's schools closed, or they themselves are a contact of a contact or a contact of a positive, and just trying to work really diligently and help them. And I'll say it again, my administrative assistant, Fran Dodaro, has been phenomenal in helping me communicate with staff and just try to help them understand what their rights are. We have staff that are utilizing EPSLA or FMLEA, or we're trying to support staff to work remotely if we can. So it's complicated, but we're trying to do our best to make sure that we create continuity in the learning in the school. So, and those are some conversations that, Joe and I are also having and trying to make decisions, and again, working closely with the teachers union as we navigate through this.
Okay, thank you.
Does anybody have any questions? Mary Pat, I know you're not on video. Do you have any questions? And Lori, no questions, right?
I don't have any.
Thank you. All right, thank you very much for the updates. I think we can move on. Joe, did you have anything else before we move on to committee reports?
No, we'll just be sending another Friday update to families. Hopefully this time it's not to talk about a COVID case, but we do have a digital lanyard that we think will be ready for Friday with various highlights from district activities. And as hard as it's been to try to create a sense of normalcy, as you saw today from Melissa Bartholomew and scores of other staff, this school community has been really resilient and has kept students in the forefront to try to create as meaningful academic experience as possible. So as this is our last meeting as we head into Thanksgiving, we want to make sure we appreciate them and hope that everyone has ample rest time, but are not resting with too many strangers. So we have to stay healthy.
All right, thank you. So committee reports are next. I understand we had an audit committee meeting. Did anybody have any comments on that? I think Enrique covered most of it.
Nothing in addition.
Okay. Anybody else have committee reports for us tonight?
Lisa, where did Lisa go? She's up on top.
Here.
Carol, I'm taking care of Luke for a second. Carol knows exactly what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Okay, so we did, I had safety, and then Lisa and Bill and I were also in facilities. So I just need a few seconds, okay? So Lisa, you take it and I'll be right back.
Sure.
Okay. Or Bill could do facilities too if he wanted, but we did meet the facilities committee and we received a report on the status of the building construction that's going on. The thing to know, I think that's most important, is that things are progressing. They're continuing to progress. They're not done yet, but we're getting there. And there's going to be we're trying to have a full report ready for our next Board of Ed meeting, and we'll have more to tell you at that point. And unfortunately, I was not able to attend the safety meeting. So Lori, if you were able to attend that one, I'd love for you to chime in about that. I did also attend some Westchester Putnam School Board Association things. There was the monthly town call that they've been having. And that particular one, it's always so helpful for me because we get to talk with other presidents or vice presidents of the boards of education of different districts in our area, and just share, what is working well, what's not going so well, and kind of learn from each other and what's going on with each other. So we were specifically talking about, using surveys, thought exchanges to kind of take the pulse of what's been happening with each of our districts as far as the hybrid learning or remote learning or whatever kind of learning it is we're doing. And then also consideration of the effect of synchronous and asynchronous learning, all these things that we're talking about tonight with Ms. Bartholomew. There's the key that we're finding is just being flexible. We all need to be so flexible with what's happening, and just that reminder. The other thing that's been going on this week is I guess that's another committee report, so I'll talk about that later. I did go to the Blue Mountain Middle School PTA meeting. That was last night, and they're doing great work there. They got some new people on their executive board. They amended their bylaws and approved them, and Mr. Owens reported on some town halls that have been happening with the middle school students already too, which I think it's really great that those are continuing. And they talked about their Thanksgiving food drive, which is currently underway. So if anybody's able to help support them with that, that would be lovely. And I think that was pretty much it. Thanks.
Thank you, Lisa. Lori, did you have anything to add? I don't know if you're still occupied.
Yes,
there.
I'm back.
Okay.
Sorry, everybody. I have a big German Shepherd that Carol takes care of, and I needed to take care of him for a second. So for safety, it was almost a mimic of our facilities, and we just went over, before COVID, we did our big bond about different reasons of safety. So we were just updated on all of the different entrances of what's going on and offices. And also there was a big thing still about the chemicals that we're using to do some cleaning. So it was pretty much almost exactly the same as our facilities report, because what we're doing in facilities, we did because of safety. So it really just kind of mimicked it. And so that was it. We talked about the chemicals. We talked about when the entrances would be finished and the different situations at each school, kind of just like Lisa described when we did facilities. So that was really pretty much it. We did have both of the guys there. Joe, what's the man's name from, it escapes me. What is the guy's name from? The guy who comes and helps us with all of it, helps Anthony?
With safety related?
Yes, yes.
Either, was it John or Cliff?
Cliff
Yeah,
was there
Cliff,
too. So
yeah, Cliff Gabrielson, parent of ours, kids graduated from our school district. He works with Alteris Safety Consulting through BOCES, correct?
Right. And Lisa, you had mentioned that so much was going to be ready by December?
Yes, well, what I said was that we'd have a full report by December as
Okay.
what's going on and the status on things.
Okay. Same with us. So that was it.
All right, thank you. Does anybody else have any committee reports for us this evening? Bill? Bill?
I was unmuting.
Oh, okay, sorry. I wasn't sure you heard me.
Except a meeting I went to that was a very good meeting. Lisa Schuckman and answered a lot of parent questions, and she kept answering the questions until every question was answered. Even though everything was done remotely, it had a good feeling of one-on-one when it came to specific questions. And when I say specific, of general how things should work, and if it's not working that way, what do you do? And I think the parents were very happy with the comments that Lisa was giving them. So I think it was incredibly productive. And we did have, some, good number of parents there, but I think it would be valuable to even more. So I'd love to see even more people go. The next SEPTA meeting is going to be January 11th. And if you forget that, it's under the SEPTA on our website. You can find their schedule. But it was a good meeting. And thank you, Lisa. It was a nice job you did that night.
Thank you, Bill. Anybody else? Okay, so that would normally bring us to our presentation and discussion section, but I don't believe we have any additional presentations this evening.
Yeah, we had Melissa under Superintendents Report.
Okay, which then brings us to our audience comments section. And as you know, at this section of our meeting, we do welcome audience comments. The comments for our non-agenda items have to be submitted by noon the day of the meeting to Carmen Koch, who's our board clerk. But other comments can be made during the presentation on board agenda items. So there are guidelines for the comments, which you can see on the screen in front of you. Those are also on board docs for anybody to view. Carmen, did we have any comments submitted this evening?
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. No, we did not have any this by 12 noon today or this evening.
Okay, thank you very much. So that brings us to our board comments and new business section. And we have several items on there, one of which is our budget calendar. And before we discuss our budget calendar, I would like to just point out that within the budget calendar, there is also information on running for the Board of Education, the dates that are and deadlines there that are mandated. So, to help people out with that, that has been a comment in the past. And thank you very much for including that in our budget calendar this year. So, Joe, did you want to comment on our budget calendar, or Enrique?
Yeah, this is part of our model to let the public know in a transparent way what board meetings will be discussing financial matters as we already build our 2021, 2022 budget. Allows the public to know what presentations and what budget focus areas will be discussed and when, and it helps make sure that we're online and on target to meet various reporting requirements for the state education department, but also to not overly burden our time together as it appears we'll stay virtual with hours and hours of presentation. We try to spread them out over time. We try to make sure that they're meaningful and engaging, and that everyone can have questions asked, and try not to inundate people with loads of really important information in a short period of time. So that's the purpose of publishing and communicating the calendar in advance.
Okay, thanks. Kind of along the same vein of giving people a lot of information at once, one of the things that we had found over the summer was that there was a lot of misinformation on social media and difficulty in figuring out who people should ask for the correct information. So I was wondering if we might consider having an Ask the Administrator FAQ on the website to kind of continue our FAQ that we started with the COVID information. What you guys thought about doing something like that to help our community with transparency and finding out the correct information, knowing where to go.
Yeah, so actually that's an initiative we're currently working on with BOCES, and it would function as like an app on our website where families or community members could go. They would click on like a button, imagine it looking like a button, and we'd have something very attention grabbing, so they know where to go and where to click. And it basically would give them a drop-down menu of various topics for them to ask a question: transportation, budget, curriculum, extracurricular activities, athletics, you name it. And then a field would show up where they could type in, their name and email address or whatever, and a question or a comment or, something for us to ponder and consider. And that would generate basically an email and would be directed to the appropriate administrator for the most part that you would see on the screen. So for people who have questions and they don't know where to go, or they don't know who to ask, or they don't want to ask their principal, this would sort of be a funnel of directing questions to one spot, and then based on the topic that they have self-identified, it would branch out and go to one of us so that it would appear as an email and we could respond quickly. And if that's a topic of community interest, meaning we're hearing that thematically, we would certainly post that as either a web story, or we would post it on our website as an FAQ to keep that feedback and communication cycle alive. But yeah, it doesn't help ruminating on social media. It's easier just to get in touch with us, and we're going to implement this mechanism to speed that process up.
That's great. It seems like we were thinking along the same lines, because I know that there were some comments in letters to the board during the summer that people had asked you or other administrators questions, and then we're relaying that information to other community members, and it just seemed like a game of telephone. So if we can kind of make the line more direct, so to speak.
Correct.
All right, do you want to talk about the roundtables first, or do the advocacy stuff, Lisa?
Either one is fine. Maybe the roundtables, just because it'll be a fairly quick discussion, I suspect.
Okay.
I mean, just that Carol and Allie and I have all been going to these Westchester Putnam School Board Association roundtables, and kind of like the town calls that I've been part of, but this has been more face-to-face communication with other board members, and I've really enjoyed them. They've been very, very useful for me, and what I'd like to do is kind of put together a little summary of them and let the rest of the board see that. But I went to one on difficult discussions at the board table, and then today there was another one about equity and how they have those kind of discussions with the board as well. And I'm not sure, I can't remember which ones Carol and Allie went to, but they've been really good. They've been really good.
The one I went to yesterday was on athletics and extracurricular activities. I love these meetings. It's such a great opportunity to share a problem in your district, your community, and ask how other people are handling the same situation. So yesterday was athletics and extracurriculars, and tomorrow I'm doing one on parent communication. And that's my plan too, Lisa. I'm gonna, after my call tomorrow, I'm gonna put everything on paper, and then I'll be able to share it with the board.
Yeah, these conversations were really kind of off the record conversations between board trustees and leadership. So it's not something we can share in a public forum like this, generally speaking, but we're taking hints away from other districts and best practices, and hopefully going to improve our practices as well. I was able to go to 3 of the roundtables, one of which is communicating with parents, to a roundtable on socially distanced board meetings as well, since it seems like we'll be in this format for a while longer yet. And also I was in the same one as Lisa this morning on addressing controversial news within your school building. So it spanned several, controversial news items and how different districts are discussing those with the kids in their school. I also, like Allie, I love these discussions. It's a great way to find out what other districts are doing and just kind of get support from other board trustees, and makes you feel like maybe you're not completely out in left field and alone. So a lot of us are dealing with very similar issues, and we got some good pearls of wisdom to pass along. So we'll summarize those and pass those along to the rest of the board members. And Lisa has some advocacy issues for us as well.
We do. And it dovetails quite nicely into the discussion we had at the beginning about the yellow zones and testing. There is a resolution that Westchester Putnam School Board Association has put together that I'd like to propose that we take a look at tonight, and decide if we're willing to adopt it or not. But it's about COVID-19 testing relief, and it just, I don't know if we want to display it on the board or not, or if you can, but it talks about just the difficulties that we discussed tonight about how there's this tremendous expense for testing that the schools shouldn't be burdened with, and we can't be burdened with. We don't have the funding for it, and it's asking and requesting that our state representatives provide relief and help with that, with the testing aspect of it. And part of this advocacy effort also includes a voter voice email, which we could send out to our parents and invite them to also sign on to the e-letter that would go to our state representatives, Sandy Galiff and Peter Harcum, and then the governor and the State Department of Education, and it has a whole list of all the people who'd be on the letter. And then there's also a letter that could go out to the community that we could use as a district to encourage people to sign on to this e-letter. Should we talk about that one?
Yeah, so let's talk about them individually. I hope everybody's had a chance to read these. They're relatively short. And we'll talk about the COVID-19 relief funding resolution first and see if that's something that we would like to pass along as a board, and then to pass along to our community. Does anybody have any questions about the resolution? Bill?
Comment, more, not necessarily a question.
Comments fine.
If we're going to go forward with the, Elisa, thank you very much for working on this, by the way. I noticed, you have the two proposals. The title of the one, the transportation, is quite clear, but the one we're talking about right now, I think the title could be a lot clearer, because I noticed in your cover email and even the cover and the heading of this is COVID-19 relief funding. I think we could be more specific. I think you're talking about testing specifically, somehow get that into the title, because COVID-19 relief funding could be one of a million things, just to better identify what the cause is, to somehow get COVID-19 testing funding relief, or so, I don't know, something, get the testing in there so we know what we're talking about.
That's a really good point, Bill. Thank you. We can add that, I think.
I also noticed that in the community member letter that you had included that it says a random COVID testing of 25%, and I think the current is 20%. Or maybe we could leave the percent out completely, because that might change tomorrow if they decide it's going to be 10% or 50%, or we just say,
I think it may have changed between when this was written and when Joe went to the meetings with the Department of Health and the Westchester Community Executive. So we could absolutely change that to 20%, or whatever people want to do there, or just leave it out.
Or just say districts and zone do random COVID testing and leave the percentage out completely.
Okay.
Does anybody else have any comments or suggestions, questions, wordsmithing? Okay, would someone like to make a motion to accept this resolution as presented with those?
Me.
Excellent. Can I get a second? Bill? Okay, thank you.
So this is for both of them. This is the one that the board is going to put out, and the one for the parents that we asked the community to also do that generic response, correct?
Correct. Yeah, they kind of go hand in hand.
Absolutely.
Okay, so all in favor of this resolution?
Aye.
Aye. Are any opposed? All right, excellent. And I'm hoping that we'll be able to get our PTAs to help us out with this as well, if they are in agreement with the resolution. So those of you who have PTA liaison positions, maybe you can forward that to them as well and see if they can talk to their membership about whether they agree with this position and whether they would help us to publicize it and get some more parental involvement. And I will be asking the same for this transportation aid during the pandemic resolution if that passes as well.
Okay. So with the transportation aid during the pandemic, what happened is in many of the districts in New York State and in our region, the buses were used to transport meals and food to students as well as acting as hotspots. And the state education department recently came out and said that they were not going to reimburse school districts for the use of the buses during the spring months because they weren't transporting students. Even though they were serving a very useful purpose for our school districts, they weren't being used in the transportation of students because the schools were closed. So this particular resolution is requesting that the districts be reimbursed for those transportation costs during the springtime period. And again, this would also be sent to a similar list of people, all of our state representatives, again, Sandy Galiff and Pete Harcum, Governor Cuomo, the whole list there. And there's a similar letter to the community that goes out explaining what this is about, and also a voter voice letter again. So any questions about this particular resolution or thoughts about it?
Correct me if I'm wrong. I think another key component of the transportation is that we're saying there's going to be a reduction in reimbursement, like you said, when they're not transporting students, but at the same time, we're required to have the bus drivers available and ready, so they're being paid. So are we not getting aid, even though we're required to have those bus drivers ready to go? And obviously we keep them on the payroll so they don't go and get another job. Sounds like that's what's happening. We're not going to be getting aid because they're not transporting kids, even though we're required to keep them on staff.
Enrique, you want to comment on that?
That's correct, Bill. The New York State Education Department decided exactly the same. Transportation aid is expense-based. So, but they are saying that this year the drivers were not driving. We should have not paid them, and they are not going to give us the aid for all the salaries that we kept paying during COVID. So that's correct. Between the two of them, probably will be losing a substantial amount of aid. Transportation aid is about $180,000 a year, and most of it comes from there. You have transportation aid on the expense base, gas, salaries, and then on the buses. But it's mainly on the operating of the buses rather than the buying of the buses. So we might lose all that amount also.
Has anyone talked about suing the state over that? Because it almost seems like you're required to have those drivers ready to go on the drop of a hat. So it's can't like you can fire them and then rehire everybody, hey, be at work in 3 days.
For us, it's even worse, Bill, because the governor told us that we cannot let go anyone, and they are our drivers. So even though we were not going to do it, they are our drivers, and we pay them better than what the other the outsourced companies do. So for us, we lost a lot more money than districts that outsource.
Because I understand that, but at the same time, regardless, you need them to be on standby, ready to go. This seems unreasonable, very much so.
Very unreasonable, because most of the districts also that outsource, they also kept kept the company there, because first of all, it was like 2 weeks, then another 2 weeks. It was not like in March they said, we're closing until September. So yeah, everyone, I don't know if there's going to be a lawsuit, but definitely that's a talk among transportation supervisors, business officials, superintendents. But I don't know, in my opinion, it should get to a lawsuit, but I don't know where, where we are, where the districts are against the state.
Thank you, Enrique. And I think Lisa's methodology is a much more friendlier method.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If there's going to be a lawsuit, it's going to be a lawsuit from one of the associations on behalf of all the school districts, rather than anything else.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right, then can I have a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you very much, Lisa, for all of your work on these resolutions. And I believe that brings us to the end of our meeting, unless anybody else has any other comments or new business that they would like to discuss.
I just have one thing. I sent everybody an email tonight regarding some kind of a new piece of equipment that they put into classrooms. Just if you would just read your emails regarding it, and maybe we can have a discussion about it. Okay, that's it.
Sure. Will do.
And I would just like to give a shout out to our teachers who created those videos for the Meet the Teacher Night. I really, really enjoyed and appreciated the effort and the time that they put into those videos. And it filled a missing piece for me. I'd kind of been missing that connection with my children's teachers. And it really was incredibly helpful and just so well done. And it really, really was impressive. So thank you to everyone who made that happen, and especially to the teachers who went to the work of producing those.
I will definitely second that.
I have one last thing. I forgot before I went to the BVPTA, and I just want to give a shout out to them because those ladies are working their tails off to try to keep things going. So shout out to the folks at the BVPTA the other evening. That's it.
All right. Okay, so I think that brings us to the end of our meeting. I would just like to say next week is Thanksgiving. I hope all of you who have been suffering and exposed to COVID recuperate very swiftly. For those of you who are fortunate not to be in that situation, please remember to stay vigilant so that we can keep our schools open. The more work you do in the community, the easier it's going to be for us. So enjoy your celebrations, but please do it responsibly. We have a lot of our college students coming home as well, so it'll be exciting to see them around the community after they have finished their quarantine period or their testing period, but not before then, hopefully. I think that's it for tonight. Our next meeting is December 2nd. And can I get a motion to close the meeting, please?
So moved.
Can I get a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Have a good evening. We'll see you on December 2nd.
Night, everyone. Thank
Good
you.
night.